Social media isn't just about likes and shares anymore. Sometimes it's about selling pieces of your soul to strangers who think they know you. And when your wife is the one doing the selling, you realize you never really knew her at all. If our stories resonate with you, don't forget to like, comment, and tell us where you're watching from. This story was shared with us by one of our longtime viewers who wanted his experience heard. I wake up to the sound of Kanya positioning her phone on the nightstand, adjusting the angle for the perfect morning shot. "Good morning, my beautiful followers," she whispers into the camera, her voice honey-sweet in that way that makes my chest warm even after 2 years of marriage. "Today, Marcus and I are going to show you our real morning routine in paradise." She turns the camera toward me, and I force a sleepy smile because I know it makes her happy when I play along. The mountain views through our bedroom window in Chiang Mai are stunning, the kind that make people back home jealous, and her 50,000 followers eat it up every single day. "Morning, love," I mumble, running my hand through my graying hair. At 58, I never thought I'd be starring in social media videos, but here I am, performing my life for strangers on the internet. Kanya giggles and kisses my cheek for the camera, and I can already imagine the comments flooding in about how lucky she is, how lucky I am, how we're relationship goals. It started innocently enough when we first got married. She'd worked as a hotel receptionist when I met her during my first month in Thailand, and her English was so much better than my Thai that she became my translator, my guide, my everything. When she suggested documenting our cross-cultural love story, it seemed sweet, romantic even. "Tell them about the coffee you're making me," she says, pointing the camera at the kitchen where I'm grinding beans I bought from a local farmer. The ritual has become so automatic that I don't even think about the performance anymore. "This is from a hill tribe village about 2 hours north of here," I explain, looking directly into the camera lens. "Kanya found this place, and now it's our little secret spot." She beams at me with genuine pride, and for a moment I forget we're being watched by thousands of people. This is the part I love most, when it feels real between us, when the camera disappears and it's just me and my beautiful wife in our beautiful life. But then she adjusts the phone again, finding a better angle to capture the steam rising from the coffee pot, and something in my stomach tightens. There's something calculated about the way she frames every shot, the way she positions my hands when I'm cooking, the way she tells me to repeat certain phrases because the audio wasn't clear. When I ask her why the camera always seems to peon, she laughs and says, "Darling, this is our life, why wouldn't we share it?" The logical part of my brain agrees with her. We're living an incredible story, the kind that people dream about. Retired American insurance adjuster finds love and happiness in Southeast Asia. But there's another part of me that wonders when my real life ends and the performance begins. "Okay, now walk to the balcony with your coffee," she directs. And I obey because making Kanya happy has become my full-time job. The morning sun hits the mountains just right, and I know this shot will get thousands of views. I sip my coffee and look out at the valley below, trying to feel the peace that everyone in the comments says they're jealous of. Sometimes I do feel it, genuinely, but other times, like now, I feel like I'm watching myself live my life instead of actually living it. When Kanya finally turns off the camera 20 minutes later, I realize I've been holding my breath. "That was perfect, baby," she says, already scrolling through the footage. "Look how handsome you look in this light." She shows me the screen, and I see myself looking relaxed and content. Everything I thought I wanted to be when I left Denver 2 years ago after my divorce. But something about seeing myself through her camera makes me feel like I'm looking at a stranger. "The followers are going to love this," she continues, and I nod because I know she's right. They always love it. They love us. They love the idea of us. But as I watch her edit the video with practiced efficiency, adding filters and choosing the perfect thumbnail, I can't shake the feeling that what we just filmed wasn't entirely real. Everything changed the day Kanya's phone started buzzing, non-stop during lunch at our favorite local restaurant. She kept checking it and giggling, her eyes getting wider with each notification. "Marcus, look at this," she said, showing me her TikTok analytics. The video from yesterday, the one where I attempted to order som tam in Thai and butchered the pronunciation so badly that the vendor and I both dissolved into laughter. had exploded overnight. 2 million views, 50,000 likes, thousands. Have comments in English, Thai, and languages I couldn't even identify. They think you're hilarious, Kanya said, scrolling through the comments. Look, this one says Marcus is the sweetest man alive. This one says I wish my husband was like this. This one says goals AF. She was practically bouncing in her seat, and I had to admit it felt good to make people laugh. I'd spent 30 years processing insurance claims, dealing with people on the worst days of their lives. Making people smile felt like redemption. We have 200,000 followers now, she announced, and my coffee cup froze halfway to my lips. 200,000. People knew who I was. 200,000 people had watched me struggle with Thai tones and thought it was charming. That's a lot of people, I said, trying to wrap my head around the number. Back in Denver, I'd had maybe 50 people I considered friends or acquaintances. Now, somehow, I was entertaining the equivalent of a small city. This is just the beginning, Kanya said, her business mind already spinning. Brands are going to want to work with us. We could make real money from this. She showed me messages from companies offering partnerships, sponsorship deals, collaboration opportunities. Numbers with more zeros than I'd seen since my divorce. Settlement. Within a week, Kanya had turned our daily life into a content machine. She bought ring lights and a better camera, created posting schedules and content calendars. We need to be consistent, she explained, setting up equipment in our bedroom before I was even fully awake. The algorithm rewards regular content. I learned words like engagement, reach, impressions. I learned that certain times of day performed better, that certain types of content got more shares. I learned that my clumsy attempts at Thai culture weren't just endearing to my wife anymore. They were a brand. Can you try to order the coconut ice cream again, but this time act more confused? Kanya would ask when we were at the night market. The comments loved it when you mixed up the words for coconut and garbage last time. I'd comply because I loved seeing her happy, loved seeing her dreams of financial independence coming true. But sometimes, late at night when she was editing videos on her laptop, I'd wonder if the man in those videos was really me or just someone I was pretending to be. The followers seemed to love this version of Marcus, bumbling but lovable, fish out of water but trying his best. The real Marcus, the one who'd spent decades being competent and serious and professional, felt like he was disappearing frame by frame. The money started coming in faster than either of us expected. First, it was a few $100s from TikTok's creator fund, then a $1,000 sponsorship from a language learning app, then $5,000 from a travel gear company that wanted me to use their backpack in our videos. Kanya managed it all with the efficiency she'd learned from her hotel management days, negotiating rates and coordinating deliveries and managing our brand image. I signed whatever contracts she put in front of me because business had never been my strong suit and she was clearly gifted at it. I have an idea, she said one morning, showing me mock-ups on her laptop, t-shirts with our faces on them, coffee mugs with quotes from our videos, phone cases with pictures of us at Thai temples. Our fans keep asking how they can support us more. This gives them a way to take a piece of our story home with them. The designs were actually cute, professional looking, not cheap or tacky. One shirt said Marcus's Thai princess with a photo of us at a waterfall. Another said, living the expat dream with a cartoon version of me holding a Thai flag. I don't know, I said, staring at my face printed on merchandise. Isn't this a little weird? People wearing our faces on their clothes? But Kanya was already excited, showing me messages from followers begging for ways to support us financially, people offering to buy anything we sold. This is how influencers make real money, she explained. The sponsorships are good, but merchandise is where you build wealth. Plus, look how much they love us. They want to feel connected to our story. She launched the merchandise store without telling me, and I found out when my phone started buzzing with notifications about orders. The first batch, 500 shirts and 200 mugs, sold out in 6 hours. I watched the order numbers climb on her laptop screen, each sale representing someone who wanted to own a piece of our life. It felt surreal and flattering, and deeply uncomfortable all at once. They're already asking for more designs, Kanya said, practically glowing. I'm thinking about doing limited edition prints, maybe some with Thai phrases you're learning. That night, I lay awake thinking about strangers wearing my face to the grocery store, drinking their morning coffee from mugs with my wedding photo on them. It should have felt like success, like we'd built something meaningful together. Instead, it felt like I'd sold something I couldn't get back, though I couldn't quite name what it was. When Kanya curled up next to me, scrolling through customer photos of people wearing our merchandise, I tried to feel proud. Mostly, I just felt exposed. The requests for personal information started innocently enough. Followers wanted to know what part of America I was from, what I did for work before Thailand, how I learned to love Thai food. Kanya started a weekly Q&A with Marcus series where she'd film me answering the most popular questions from comments. I found myself talking about my childhood in Denver, my failed marriage, my decision to start over in Southeast Asia at 56. The questions kept getting more specific. What was my ex-wife's name? What street did I grow up on? What was my first pet's name? They just want to feel connected to you, Kanya explained when I mentioned feeling uncomfortable with the personal nature of the questions. You're like their friend now. They care about your story. And it was true. The comments were overwhelmingly supportive. People thanked me for being vulnerable, for showing that it was possible to start over later in life, for proving that love could cross cultures. Men my age wrote long messages about their own dreams of expat life, asking for advice about dating. Younger women, seeking guidance about retirement in Thailand. I started looking forward to the Q&A sessions. After years of feeling invisible in my marriage and irrelevant in my career, it felt good to be heard, to have my experiences matter. To people, what was the moment you knew you wanted to stay in Thailand? I'd answer honestly, talking about the night Kanya took me to meet her family, how her grandmother held my hands and spoke to me in Thai even though I couldn't understand, how I felt. More accepted in that moment than I had in years of American small talk. What's your biggest regret? I'd admit to wasting too many years in a marriage that was already dead, to being too scared to travel when I was younger, to almost letting fear keep me from the best part of my life. But then the questions got weird. Someone asked for my social security number to send a birthday gift. Another wanted my mother's maiden name for a surprise family tree project. A fan claimed he needed my bank routing number to send a donation to our travel fund. Kanya would laugh these off during filming, saying, "Nice try, but we're not that trusting." But I noticed she'd screenshot the questions before deleting them. "Just keeping track of the crazy ones," she'd say when I asked why. I started paying more attention to exactly what information I was sharing in these videos. Street names from my childhood, the name of my high school, the hospital where I was born. Details that seemed harmless in the context of storytelling, but could probably be pieced together into something useful by someone with bad intentions. When I mentioned this to Kanya, she assured me that she was careful about editing out anything too sensitive. "I know how to protect us," she said. "Trust me." And I did trust her. She'd grown up in a country where scams and fraud were everyday concerns. If anyone could navigate the dangers of oversharing online, it was her. The Bangkok meetup was Kanya's idea, a way to give back to our most loyal supporters. She'd been getting messages from followers living in Thailand, mostly other Western expat men who related to our story and wanted to meet us in person. "It'll be like a small fan convention," she said excitedly. "We can take photos, answer questions, maybe film some content with them. They've been so generous with their support, this feels like the least we can do." I was nervous about meeting internet strangers in person, but Kanya had already rented a private room at a Bangkok hotel and sent invitations to our top 20 supporters. "They're all verified followers with real profiles," she assured me. "I've been talking to some of them for months. They're just lonely expat guys who enjoy living vicariously through our happiness." When she put it that way, it sounded almost charitable. I remembered being that lonely expat guy myself not so long ago. The meetup started normally enough. 12 men showed up, ages ranging from early 40s to late 60s, all Americans or Brits living in various parts of Thailand. They were polite, grateful, genuinely excited to meet us. They asked for photos and autographs on their merchandise, and I signed coffee mugs and t-shirts with my face on them while trying not to feel completely surreal about the whole situation. "You're even funnier in person," one guy named Robert said. "That video where you tried to ride the motorbike taxi had me crying laughing, but then things got specific in ways that made my skin crawl." "How's your recovery going from that kidney stone you had in March?" asked a man named David. I stared at him blankly. "I never had a kidney stone," I said. He looked confused and pulled out his phone, showing me a screenshot of what looked like a private message from Kanya's account. "She told us you were in the hospital for 3 days. We were all worried." I looked at Kanya, who was suddenly very interested in her own phone. Another man, Tom, mentioned knowing about my financial troubles with the IRS back in 2019 and how inspiring it was that I'd turned my life around. I'd never had problems with the IRS. A third fan asked about my diabetes management routine and whether Thai food was hard to navigate with my dietary restrictions. I wasn't diabetic. When I pulled Kanya aside and asked her what was going on, she looked panicked. "I might have embellished some stories to make the content more engaging," she whispered. "Followers like drama. They like feeling like they're supporting you through hard times." But the worst moment came when a quiet man named Greg mentioned my social security number ending in 2847. "I hope the identity monitoring service you signed up for is working out," he said casually. "Identity theft is such a nightmare to recover from." My blood went cold. My SSN did end in 2847. I'd never shared that information anywhere, certainly not in any video or public forum. When I confronted Greg about how he knew that, he seemed genuinely confused. "Kanya shared it in the premium supporter group," he said. "She was asking for advice about American financial systems to help you with some banking issues." I looked across the room at Kanya, who was laughing and taking selfies with other fans, and for the first time since I'd met her, I wondered if I knew my wife at all. That night, I waited until Kanya was asleep and then spent 3 hours going through every social media account she had access to. What I found made me sick to my stomach. Beyond the public TikTok account we both knew about, she had a premium OnlyFans account called Inside Life with Marcus, where for $50 a month, subscribers could access exclusive behind-the-scenes content about our relationship. The preview images showed me sleeping, showering, having emotional conversations I thought were private, even arguing with her about money. But it got worse. She'd been posting photos of my personal documents, my passport, my bank statements, even my medical records from a routine checkup. The captions marketed them as authentic expat documentation and real American paperwork for educational purposes. Subscribers could download high-resolution copies of my birth certificate, my social security card, my driver's license. Everything someone would need to steal my identity was available for the price of a monthly subscription. I found private chat logs where she'd been answering detailed questions about my personal history, my family, my financial situation. She'd created an entire mythology around my life that was part truth, part fiction, all designed to make me seem more interesting and vulnerable to her audience. I was simultaneously a successful retiree and a financial disaster, a confident world traveler and a lost soul seeking redemption, a devoted husband and a man with a mysterious past. Whatever version of Marcus her subscribers wanted, she provided. When I confronted her the next morning, she initially tried to deny it. "You're being paranoid," she said, not looking up from her phone. "You know I would never do anything to hurt you." But when I showed her screenshots I'd taken of her premium content, she broke down completely. Tears, hyperventilation, the works. "I was just trying to give them what they wanted," she sobbed. "They love you so much, Marcus. They want to feel close to our life. It's harmless." Harmless? I could barely keep my voice steady. "You posted my social security number, Kanya, my passport information, my bank account details. Do you understand what someone could do with that?" She looked at me like I was overreacting, like I was the one being unreasonable. "It's just paperwork," she said. "It's not like I was selling drugs or something illegal." The casual way she said it, like selling someone's identity, was a minor transgression, made me realize how little she understood about American financial systems or the concept of privacy. "How much money have you made from this?" I asked, and her silence told me everything. When she finally admitted it was over $30,000 in the past 6 months, I felt like I'd been punched in the chest. She'd made more money selling access to my private life than I'd ever made in a year as an insurance adjuster. "Where is that money?" I asked. She looked away. "I sent most of it to my family. My mother needed surgery. My brother needed money for his business. I was going to tell you, but you've been so happy lately, and I didn't want to worry you with family drama." I wanted to understand, wanted to believe that her motivations were pure, but the scale of the deception was overwhelming. This wasn't impulsive oversharing or cultural misunderstanding. This was a systematic operation that had been running for months while I slept next to her every night, trusting her completely. "Who else knows about this?" I asked. She wouldn't meet my eyes. "Just my cousin Anjali. She helps me manage the technical stuff." I realized that while I'd been falling in love with my wife and our life together, she'd been running a business, selling pieces of my identity to strangers on the internet. The phone call started 3 days after I discovered the premium account. First, it was Wells Fargo, asking about a credit card application I'd never submitted, then Chase, then Bank of America, then companies I'd never heard of. Someone had been using my information to open accounts, apply for loans, and run up debt in my name. The customer service representatives were polite but firm. All the applications had been submitted with correct personal information, including details that weren't publicly available. I spent entire days on hold with fraud departments, explaining over and over that I hadn't applied for credit cards or personal loans, that I was living in Thailand and hadn't been physically present in the United States for any of these applications. The representatives would put notes on my accounts, cancel the fraudulent applications, but more kept appearing. It was like playing whack-a-mole with my own identity. "This is getting out of hand," I told Kanya after spending 4 hours on the phone with various banks. She was sitting on our couch, editing another TikTok video like nothing was wrong. "Someone is using our premium content to commit actual crimes." She looked up from her laptop with genuine confusion. "How is that my fault?" she asked. "I can't control what people do with information after they pay for it. That's their responsibility." Her lack of understanding about cause and effect was staggering. She'd created a marketplace for my personal information and then acted surprised when people used that information for criminal purposes. "You'll have to shut down the premium account," I said. "Delete everything. Refund the subscribers. This ends now." She looked at me like I'd suggested burning down our house. "Marcus, we make $15,000 a month from that account. That's more money than you ever made at your job. Why would we give that up because some bad people misused information?" That's when I realized she'd been tracking how much money I'd made as an insurance adjuster, probably for content purposes. She knew exactly how much my pension was, how much I had in savings, how much my divorce had cost me. She knew my financial situation better than I did because she'd been monetizing every detail of my life. "Because it's my life," I said, "my identity, my choice." She stared at me like this was the most unreasonable thing she'd ever heard. "But it's our life," she replied. "We built this together. These people love us. Why do you want to take that away?" I started doing my own investigation into exactly how deep this went, and what I found was worse than I could have imagined. Kanya hadn't just been selling my documents to random subscribers. She'd been working with a network of people who specialized in helping men create new identities for various purposes. Some wanted to escape debt or legal problems in their home countries. Others wanted to start fresh relationships without their history following them. A few were trying to commit immigration fraud or tax evasion. My information was being packaged and sold as Marcus Thompson starter packs, complete with birth certificate, social security number, employment history, credit report, and even personality profiles based on our TikTok content. For $5,000, someone could buy everything they needed to become me, plus coaching on how to mimic my mannerisms and speech patterns based on hours of video content. Kanya had been working with document forgers in Bangkok and Pattaya, who specialized in creating official-looking American paperwork for new identities. The operation was sophisticated enough that some of the fake Marcus Thompsons had successfully opened businesses, gotten married, and even obtained Thai visas. Using my stolen identity, my phone rang constantly with calls from creditors, confused government officials, and angry women who'd discovered their boyfriends were living under assumed names. One particularly heartbreaking call came from a woman in Phuket whose Marcus had abandoned her and their 2 young children after emptying her bank account. She'd found our TikTok videos and assumed I was the same person who destroyed her life. "How many people are using my identity?" I asked Kanya when I confronted her with evidence of the broader network. She'd gone from denial to defensiveness, to a kind of resigned honesty that was almost worse than the lying. "I don't keep track of what happens after people buy the packages," she said. "Maybe 30? Maybe 50? Some of them just wanted the documents for emergencies, not to actually use them." The casual way she said, "Maybe 50 people were living as me," made me feel like I was losing my mind. I started getting reports from Thai immigration officials about Marcus Thompson's overstaying visas, getting arrested for various crimes, and causing diplomatic incidents in multiple countries. My name was flagged in databases across Southeast Asia as potentially fraudulent. The real me couldn't travel anywhere without triggering security alerts and lengthy questioning about which Marcus Thompson I actually was. When I went to the Thai police to file a report, the officer looked at me with a mixture of sympathy and exhaustion. "Mr. Thompson, we have 12 active cases involving someone using your name," he said, pulling out a thick file. "Some involve financial fraud, others involve immigration violations, and one involves domestic violence charges in Myanmar." He explained that prosecuting international identity theft cases was extremely complex, especially when the original victim was a foreigner and the perpetrators were operating across multiple countries. "Your wife has created what we call an identity factory," the officer continued. "This is not uncommon in tourist areas where many foreigners have complicated relationships with local women, but the scale of this operation is unusual." He showed me evidence they'd gathered, screenshots of advertisement on dark web forums, testimonials from satisfied customers who'd successfully used my identity, and even videos of other men pretending to be me to scam women on dating apps. The investigation would take years, he explained, and might not result in significant jail time, given the complexity of international law and the fact that many of the victims were in other countries. "My advice to you is to return to America immediately and begin the process of completely changing your legal identity," he said. "Get a new social security number, new passport, new everything. The Marcus Thompson identity has been compromised beyond repair." I looked at Kanya, who had been silent during the entire meeting with police. She wasn't crying or apologetic anymore. She looked annoyed, like we were all overreacting to a minor business dispute. "This is ridiculous," she said, as we left the police station. "People change their identities all the time in America. Why is everyone acting like this is such a big deal?" I realized she genuinely didn't understand that identity theft was a serious crime, not just a creative business opportunity. The flight back to Denver was surreal. I had to travel with temporary documents because my passport was flagged as potentially fraudulent. Airport security questioned me extensively at both Bangkok and Los Angeles, comparing my face to photos and asking detailed questions about my background to verify I was the real Marcus Thompson. Other passengers stared as I was escorted to private rooms for additional screening. I felt like a criminal, trying to prove I was myself. During the 15-hour flight, I started writing down everything I could remember about the past 2 years, not for legal purposes, but to try to understand how I'd let this happen. How had I gone from lonely retiree to internet celebrity to identity theft victim in such a short time? When had I stopped being a person and become content? At what point had I handed over control of my life to someone who saw me as a product, to be monetized? I thought about all the red flags I'd ignored, the way Kanya always seemed to be recording, the increasingly personal questions from followers, the premium content I'd never asked about. I'd been so grateful for love and attention that I'd stopped paying attention to what I was giving up in return. The saddest part was that I still loved her, even knowing what she'd done. She'd given me the happiest 2 years of my adult life, even if they'd been built on a lie. Back in Denver, I moved into a furnished apartment near my lawyer's office and began the long process of reclaiming my identity. The legal name change paperwork alone took months. Getting a new social security number required proving substantial ongoing harm from identity theft. Rebuilding credit was like starting from zero at age 58. Every form I filled out required explanations about why I needed new documentation, and many institutions were skeptical about the whole story. The most surreal part was discovering new Marcus Thompsons every few weeks. A private investigator I hired to track the scope of the fraud would send me updates: another arrest in Cambodia, another marriage in Vietnam, another business registration in the Philippines. Men were living entire lives as me, using my history and personality as a foundation for their new identities. Some had even studied our TikTok videos so carefully that they could mimic my voice and mannerisms convincingly. Kanya continued making content as if nothing had happened. Her new boyfriend, a 62-year-old British man named William, appeared in videos using the same hashtags and even some of the same phrases that had made our content popular. The followers didn't seem to notice or care that I'd been replaced. They just wanted the fantasy of the older Western man living happily in Thailand with his young Thai wife. William laughed at her jokes, struggled with Thai pronunciation, and posed for merchandise photos with the same confused smile I'd perfected. Sometimes I'd watch her videos late at night, trying to understand if anything between us had been real. She looked genuinely happy with William, the same way she'd looked with me. She used the same pet names, took him to the same restaurants, even recreated some of our most popular video concepts. In one particularly painful video, she taught William to make the same coffee ritual that had been our thing, using identical camera angles and the same background music. The comments on her new videos occasionally mentioned me. What happened to Marcus? We miss the old Marcus. Is this Marcus 2.0? But most followers seemed content with the new version of the story. Some even preferred William because his British accent made the Thai pronunciation mistakes sound more charming. I realized that I'd been replaceable all along, not as a husband, but as a character in her ongoing performance. The identity theft specialist I worked with explained that my case was unusual in its scope, but not unique in its basic structure. We see this increasingly with Americans who become social media famous abroad, she said. The combination of oversharing, cultural differences in privacy expectations, and the financial incentives of content creation creates perfect conditions for identity exploitation. She estimated it would take 5 to 7 years to fully clean up the damage, assuming no new Marcus Thompsons emerged. I spent months in legal battles with credit agencies, banks, immigration authorities, and even dating apps where men were using my photos and personal information to catfish women. Each case required extensive documentation, proving I was the real Marcus Thompson, which became increasingly difficult as more fake versions of me appeared in official databases. I had to provide DNA samples, undergo psychological evaluations, and submit to detailed background checks to verify my own identity. The financial cost of reconstruction was devastating. Legal fees, document replacement costs, credit monitoring services, and the ongoing investigation expenses drained my retirement savings faster than I'd ever imagined. I had to take a part-time job at a call center at 58 after 30 years in insurance, just to pay for the privilege of proving I existed. The younger employees would sometimes recognize me from viral TikTok videos and ask if I was the Marcus from Thailand, never knowing how complicated that question had become. At night, in my sterile apartment that felt nothing like home, I'd wonder if any of it had been worth it. The 2 years in Thailand had been the happiest of my adult life, even if they'd been built on exploitation I was too blind to see. I'd felt useful, entertaining, loved by both Kanya and thousands of strangers on the internet. Now I felt invisible again, just another middle-aged man struggling with technology and wondering where his life had gone wrong. The hardest part was accepting that Kanya probably wasn't evil, just opportunistic in ways I'd never learned to recognize. She'd grown up in poverty, seen a chance to build financial security for herself and her family, and taken it without fully understanding the consequences for me. In her mind, she'd made us both famous and wealthy. Wasn't that what every American wanted? The fact that she'd destroyed my identity in the process was collateral damage she hadn't anticipated or worried about. Sometimes I'd get messages from men who recognize my name from the identity theft forums, asking for advice about protecting themselves in similar relationships. I'd try to help, but my warnings always sounded paranoid and bitter, like a man who couldn't handle his young wife's success. The cultural narrative around older Western men and younger Southeast Asian women is so loaded with assumptions about money and manipulation that people hear what they expect to hear, regardless of the actual facts. The most painful realization was that social media had taught me to see my own life as content, to measure my experiences by their potential entertainment value rather than their meaning to me. Even now, sometimes I catch myself thinking about how this whole experience would make an interesting video, how I could explain the identity theft process in an engaging way, what the comments would say about my comeback story. The performance had become so ingrained that I struggled to separate my real thoughts from what might get views. 6 months after returning to Denver, I got a call from someone claiming to be Marcus Thompson, number 47, a man in Laos who'd been using my identity to run a fake charity for orphaned elephants. He'd been arrested for fraud and wanted to know if I could somehow take responsibility for his crimes, since they'd technically been committed in my name. The casual way he asked, like I might be willing to serve jail time for his convenience, made me realize how completely my identity had been devalued in the marketplace Kanye had created. I hang up the phone and sit in my apartment, surrounded by legal documents and identity verification paperwork, trying to remember who Marcus Thompson was before he became a brand. I'm 58 years old, and I'm learning to be myself again. But myself feels like a character I used to play rather than a person I actually am. The man in those TikTok videos seems like someone I knew once but can't quite remember. Happier, more confident, blissfully unaware that his wife was selling him piece by piece to anyone willing to pay. Sometimes I wonder if this is just what modern life is like. Everyone performing versions of themselves for audiences they'll never meet. Everyone selling their privacy for the illusion of connection. Everyone discovering too late that they've given away something they can never get back. My story might be extreme, but maybe it's also just the logical end point of a world where love and identity and even marriage have become content to be optimized, monetized, and distributed to anyone with $50 and a dream of being someone else.